72. We cover FM Field Manual 22 TAC 10, which is an earlier edition written in 1951 of leadership for the Army. So now we get to go back, and I will get the newer version. I'll get the one that Mac wrote, and I'll compare the two and see what lessons he brought. Because if you think about it, the reason I picked 1951 is post World War II, right? So we're talking immediately after World War II. These are the guys that sat down and said, hey, here's what we should be teaching. So I don't even think they revised it after Korea, but now Max will be post-Vietnam. So it'll be an interesting study. And you're right. You know, these guys that, and one thing that I talk about on a lot of these manuals when we cover them is, you know, I'll be saying, whoever wrote that, like who wrote that part right there? That right there is solid. That one. And, you know, sometimes I joke about it being a committee in there. There's one guy that's really good, and Lieutenant Colonel Pogue or Colonel Pogue is on the other side saying, we can't say that type of thing. That'll be offensive to, you know, whatever. There's always that guy. And then there's like the combat vet that's putting it straight. So now I got a name to go with the combat guy that's putting it straight. His name is Mac Harris.
Yeah. And, you know, just so you know, his last assignment was to rewrite the leadership manual at Leavenworth. And he got a lot of pushback.
I'm sure he did.
From top folks who didn't want to go in the direction that he was taking it. And he wanted to talk about leadership through very personal stories of history. And those leadership manuals can be very sort of dry and a little bit technical and just sort of blah, blah, blah. And Mac tells stories about Little Round Top and Pickett's Charge and all this stuff in there. And he was getting a lot of pushback from people. But he pushed back himself, and they published the leadership manual about a month after he passed away. It was finally published and brought to light, and they're still using it today at West Point and throughout the Army.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're going to jump forward a little bit here. Moira and I made a decision to break from Steppenwolf, move out to Los Angeles. Your parents had moved out there and lived with my parents for a while. We also decided to get married. Mom was thrilled and jumped into wedding planning with Moira, but I could tell something was churning in Moira's mind. One day shortly, and again, I'm skipping around because I can't read this whole book. People got to buy the book. One day shortly before the wedding date, Moira told me she planned to fly home to Illinois to spend some time with her mom before coming back for the wedding. A couple of days after she landed in Chicago, the phone rang. Gary, I don't want to get married, Moira said. I'm not coming back. Well, what? I said. She paused and added, I can't do it. Wait, invitations have gone out. We've got all the food ordered. I know, but I'm not going to do it. I can't. I just can't. So that's kind of... And that's got to be a big hit. Or were you nervous about it too, enough to be like, well, I guess we're good?
Well,
because how old were you?
There were I was more afraid of my mom, who was spending the money on the napkins and the tablecloths and things like that. Then, okay, I accepted it. You know, I was disappointed, but then I accepted it, and we kind of went our separate ways for about a year and a half. And here we are, all these years later, back together, and we've been married many, many years now.
I had to talk about this. In late summer 1979, I found out that Robert Redford was making a big movie called Ordinary People, and I landed an audition, but didn't get called back. How could that be? I was perfect for this role, I thought. Mr. Redford didn't know what he was missing. The story takes place in Lake Forest, Illinois, right next to Highland Park, where I grew up. This is me. I already know this character inside and out. I should be playing this part. I'd heard all these Hollywood urban myths, like the one where Steven Spielberg climbs over the fence at Universal Studios and gets his start in the film industry. I thought, hey, I can do that too. As soon as he sees me, Mr. Redford will cast me. All I need is for him to see me face to face. So I sneaked into the Warner Brothers lot, planted myself down on the couch in the office of the casting director, Penny Perry, and informed the receptionist that I wouldn't leave until I could have an audition with Mr. Redford himself. The receptionist asked if I had an appointment. I said no, but explained the story. The receptionist went and told Penny, and Penny came out and asked in a kind but very flat voice, Gary, what are you doing? I know I wasn't cast, I said, but I grew up in Highland Park. I'm perfect for this movie. I need to see Robert Redford. She sighed. Sorry, you are not going to see Robert Redford. Well, I'm not leaving. I'm going to sit right on this couch until I do. She crossed her arms. Gary, don't do this. If you don't get off the couch, I'm going to have to call security. Please, I grew up right there. Penny's eyebrows lowered. You auditioned. You didn't get called back. Leave the building or you will be taken off the lot. I stared back at her, silent, hangdog. Reluctantly, I accepted the fact that Robert Redford would not be meeting Gary Sinise that afternoon. I slowly got up, utterly defeated, left the office, and walked out the front of the gate of the studios. I wasn't doing very well in this town. The thought of heading back to Chicago sounded better and better. On the way home, I came to the conclusion that had been brewing in me for a while now. Hollywood hates me. Timothy Hutton landed the part. It was his first acting gig since playing a bit role in a movie when he was a kid, plus a few small TV slots on Disney. Tim had never lived anywhere close to Highland Park, but for his performance in Ordinary People, he ended up winning an Oscar. He was only 20 when he won the youngest male actor to win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. And I had to admit it. He was really good. That's how it goes in Hollywood. And nope, to this day, I've never met Robert Redford. Having decided Hollywood hated me, I started packing up to go home. So that's a great story of rejection.
Yeah. Well, that's you have to learn to live with rejection if you're going to be an actor. Yeah, because it's you're going to be rejected more often than accepted. You know, there's more actors than parts. So how many actors go up for a part? You know, for one part, you know, hundreds of actors go up try to get one part.
I went to, I was working with a company up in L.A., and I went up to speak to them, and they were located around the corner from a casting whatever place. And I show up there, and there's, call it 400 10-year-old kids in this line with their parents. And I go to talk to the company that I'm talking to, and I'm just talking to the executives. And as I show up there, I'm like, hey, what are all these people doing here? And they said, yeah, there's a casting call for, obviously for some kid's movie or TV show or a commercial.
Yeah,
who knows? Right. So yeah, I was going to say there's more actors than there are people in L.A.
Yeah. Oh, I was rejected a lot in the early days of the Hollywood thing. That was when I was living in California. Moira and I had come out. We broke up, but I stayed for a while and kept trying to audition and get parts and whatnot. I was there for about a year and a half. Never got anything until I made a decision to leave and go back to Chicago. Then I landed one little part on Knots Landing.
People always hear, what do they call it? What's the bias? Echo, I need your help on the bias. Survival bias? So you always hear about
bias,
survival ship bias. So you always hear about the person that went in, stormed into the office, said, I need to audition for this role, and then they got it, and then everything's cool. Yeah. You don't hear this one. No. Where like you storm in, you're committed, so you're believing in yourself, and you stand there and say, no, I need to talk to Robert Redford. I'm here. Gary Sinise is in the house. And he's like, cool. Yeah. Get out. Yeah. Call security. Man. You don't get to hear. That's why I like this story, because people think, they think if they do that, whatever that thing is, that it's going to work. And it doesn't always work.
Doesn't always work. I remember times where I auditioned for something in Hollywood, and I remember at the end of the audition, the casting director goes to me, where did you study? And I said, well, I didn't study. I have my own theater company. I've been working with my own theater company. I did acting in high school. And, well, don't you think you should study a little bit? And I said, well, I have my own theater company. We've been doing really well. And I think you should come back here after you've studied. Mm-hmm. And she was telling me to go get acting lessons, because I wasn't good enough. And I never forgot that. So I went back to Chicago and did my theater company and came in the back door.
I was going to say, don't you think if there's someone in Hollywood that had to pay their little dues, they had to go to their acting, they had to do all these things, and then you show up trying to sneak in the back door, that they kind of hold that against you?
Well, what I mean by sneak in the back door is I focused on the theater company and building the theater company in Chicago and doing our work. We eventually moved some of that work to New York City, where it became very, very popular. So now we're doing shows in New York, and all the casting directors and producers and people from Hollywood are going to New York, and they're seeing our shows. Yeah. And next thing I know, people know who I am. I can get the audition if I want, and it's just because we were able to show our work, show what we do on stage. When you go in an audition, you're sitting in a room like this, and you got two guys like that, and they're looking at you, and you're emoting, or you're doing whatever you're doing. Somebody's reading the other part, and they're kind of flat, and you're supposed to act with them and all that stuff. It's really, or you're in a hotel room and you're doing that. And it's no fun. I preferred to just go back to Chicago, do our work, and show what we do, and that ended up working. Yeah,
that's the DIY. That's the punk rock mentality. I know that you're basically too old to be part of that scene, but that's pretty punk rock to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, okay, I'm not going to play your game. I'll be over here building an empire. What do you got? Yeah, you talk about that. But just before I left Hollywood, my agent landed me an audition for a bit part on primetime evening soap opera Knots Landing, playing a teenager doing some underage drinking at a party on the beach. Well, at least you were kind of, that wasn't really a stretch.
It was my wheelhouse, yes.
I got the part. My character's name was Lee Maddox, and I had a couple of lines and a makeout scene with a girl while sitting beside a campfire. My very first time acting film. Let's just say it wasn't From Here to Eternity. Certainly not enough to keep me in Los Angeles any longer. Steppenwolf opened the 1980 season in March. I moved back with no place to live. I just showed up with my bags and said, hi, I'm back. What can I do? Steppenwolf folded me into the company immediately, although our current season was already underway, so I had no formal roles to play. Then you did some stand-ins when guys were sick or whatever. Steppenwolf wasn't rolling in dough, but we could finally pay our actors a bit. And that's a big step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You did a play called Getting Out. I received my first award nomination called the Joseph Jefferson Award. The nomination was for Best Supporting Actor, and I won. I loved Chicago. In Hollywood, I was a dopey disco dancer in the background with Luke and Laura. I was a loser guy on the beach, and I'd been thrown out off the lot at Warner Brothers and told by a casting director to come back when I had some acting lessons. I couldn't get ahead no matter how hard I tried, but back in Chicago, I went to work as an actor almost right away, got paid for it, and won a recognized award all within 6 months. Meanwhile, this is going on. Moira finished nursing school in California. Yet she never worked as a nurse. She moved back to Chicago in 1981 and rejoined the company, and we formally rekindled our relationship somewhere in the middle of the revival production of Balm in
Gilead.
Balm in Gilead. Moira and I took a good look at each other, shrugged, and said to each other, hey, let's get married. So you're back in the game. H.E. Bacchus. Keep forgetting it.
Bacchus. Yeah.
Bacchus. H.E. Bacchus was the artistic director. He quits. And then it's between you and Malkovich being suggested to be the AD artistic director. You like that echo, Charles?
Yes.
He's kind of a Hollywood guy. The ensemble voted, and you landed the position. You thought Malkovich was relieved. And this is where I sent some Mac Harris. I was convinced. So now you're taking over as the artistic director, so what does that mean? You're picking the plays?
Yeah, run the company. Yeah, basically.